Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire. Ye have heaped treasure together for the last days. Behold, the hire of the laborers who have reaped down your fields, which is of you kept back by fraud, crieth. And the cries of them which have reaped are entered into the ears of the Lord of Sabaoth. Ye have lived in pleasure on the earth, and been wanton. Ye have nourished your hearts as in a day of slaughter. Ye have condemned and killed the just, and he doth not resist you. Be patient, therefore, brethren, unto the coming of the Lord. Behold, the husbandman waiteth for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath long patience for it, until he receive the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient. Establish your hearts, for the coming of the Lord draweth nigh. Grudge not one against another, brethren, lest ye be condemned. Behold, the judge standeth before the door. Take, my brethren, the prophets, who have spoken in the name of the Lord, for an example of suffering, affliction, and of patience. Behold, we count them happy which endure. Ye have heard of the patience of Job, and have seen the end of the Lord, that the Lord is very pitiful and of tender mercy. But above all things, my brethren, swear not, neither by heaven, neither by the earth, neither by any other oath. But let your yea be yea, and your nay, nay, lest ye fall into condemnation. Is any among you afflicted? Let him pray. Is any merry? Let him sing psalms. Is any sick among you? Let him call for the elders of the church, and let them pray over him, anointing him with oil in the name of the Lord. And the prayer of faith shall save the sick, and the Lord shall raise him up. And if he have committed sins, they shall be forgiven him. Confess your faults one to another, and pray one for another, that ye may be healed. The effectual fervent prayer of a righteous man availeth much. Elijah was a man subject to like passions as we are, and he prayed earnestly that it might not rain, and it rained not on the earth by the space of 3 years and 6 months. And he prayed again, and the heaven gave rain, and the earth brought forth her fruit. Brethren, if any of you do err from the truth, and one convert him, let him know that he which converteth the sinner from the error of his way shall save a soul from death, and shall hide a multitude of sins.
Hello and welcome everybody to the Bret Norman Broadcast Network on this beautiful Tuesday, May 7th, 2019. And I'm joined here with Jörg in Belgium. And we are going to read the Divine Program of the World's History. We are in the second portion of the book. I was looking at page, I think it was 70-something, Jörg, I forget, in the PDF.
62 in the book, 75 in the PDF, brother.
Thank you. Yes, I took my marker out, and Jörg and I are going to get right into it. And we are dealing with the topic here at the top of the page. It says Jesuit methods at, what is that? Can't read this word for some reason.
The Jesuits acquire business firms' secrets. Jesuit methods at deathbeds.
It says deathbeds.
At deathbeds.
Jesuit methods at deathbeds. Oh, isn't that great? Just like in Scripture when it says, I think, was it Jesus that said something about devouring widows' houses?
Yeah, and the Jesuits are very famous for applying the last unction, and by that getting all the money and all the possessions of the person who dies, that they're going to make it all over to the Jesuit order, you know. And that's their power on the deathbed. Yeah. And if you don't die from your own, they will help it a little bit with arsenic or something like that. They are also very famous for that. So the deathbed has a lot of meanings to the Jesuit order.
It does. It does. Well, thanks to a technical issue being resolved, we have 2 backup recordings going and the main recording that Jörg Lissman is doing there in Belgium on his computer. And it's just so wonderful we're able to do this, Jörg, and be able to make videos and put them up so quickly now. It's just great. I love it.
Yeah, it is, but still there are many videos in the waiting line that have to be published from earlier. Like the one that I'm going to start today with, you'll probably remember, Bret, that we read the whole book of Code Word Babylon, Danger in the Vatican.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
And you just uploaded, that's the status of today. You just uploaded part 33, you finished producing part 34. And I was just a little bit wondering about what the author Albert Close always says about 1622 and the Secreta Monita, and I thought, well, we read some other dates in P.D. Stewart's book of the Secret Instructions. The book starts with it on page 13 of all pages.
That's right. Yes.
He starts with the Secret Instructions and says, in the year 1870, a young, and by the way, he has a typing error in the book, a printing error. It says 1780, but it must read 1870.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, right.
A young and obscure French archaeologist, who shall remain anonymous, made a most unlikely and surprising find. A discovery that was afterwards destined to cause renewed and worldwide interest in a notorious secret society. So the record states. Although he did not realize it at the time, the young archaeologist's discovery shed light on the most intriguing statement by the Abbot M. Leone, who said, quote, "There are in the central house at Rome huge registers wherein are inscribed the names of all the important persons, friends or enemies. It is the most gigantic biographical collection that has ever been formed. When it is required to act in any way upon an individual, they open the book and become immediately acquainted with his life, his character, his qualities, his defects, his projects, his family, his friends, and even his most secret acquaintances." Unquote. So the book goes on to tell us then the story how the Secreta Monita was developed by a young man, as I said, who was traveling through South America, and they're staying in a hotel, and in that hotel bed a Jesuit priest left the Secreta Monita under the mattress, and that of course was and then he goes on to speak all about 1612, and the author Albert Close always speaks of 1622. So I'm not pulling it all out here, just go to our readings of Code Word Babylon, and then you will see what we read there and what the other dates all are. It's quite interesting, of course, that you learn about the Moneta Secreta, or the secret instructions of the Jesuits. And as I said earlier, it is not that important how they came to life, but it is much more important that we understand that even when we don't have the secret instructions, we still understand by their fruits you will know them, as the Bible tells us, what the Jesuit have for a kind of an order. What the Compañía de Jesús, as they like to call them in Spanish, actually really is. Now, with this little introduction, and of course making a little bit advertisement for that, you please go to our book readings of Code Word Babylon, 666 Danger in the Vatican, the Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination, that was written by P.D. Stewart, published in 2006, that we studied in depth and read all 525 pages in about 100 broadcasts. We are returning today now to the book of the Divine Program, written by Albert Close, using the same title as Henry Grattan Guinness for his book, that this Albert Close published in the 1910s. Let's say somewhere between 1914 and the end of the First, or the Great War, as they call it, the First World War, or the Great War. And we are, as Bret already said in the beginning, on page 62 in the book, in the second part of the book, and that is page 75 in the PDF. We are still dealing with the analyzing the Secreta Monita, and we are going to the next chapter, where it says how Jesuits acquire business firms' secrets. Well, if you're a self-employed man who has his own company, you're probably interested in these kind of politics that they have. Let the stewards of our college get an exact knowledge of the houses, gardens, quarries of stone, vineyards, manor, and other riches of everyone who lives near the place where they reside, and if it be possible, what degree of affection they have for us, the book starts to say. In the next place, we should discover every man's office and the reverence of it, and the revenue of it, their possessions and the articles of their contracts. Let me just put the picture in that picture here. And the articles of their contracts, which they may surely do by confessions, by meetings and by entertainments, or by our trusty friends. And generally, when any confessor lights upon a wealthy person from whom he hath good hopes of profit, he is obliged forthwith to give notice of it and discover it at his return. Unquote. It's all one quote after the other, so I will start saying quote unquote. They should also inform themselves exactly whether there be any hope of obtaining bargains, goods, possessions, pious gifts, and the like in exchange for the admission of their sons into our society. If a wealthy family have daughters only, they are to be drawn by caresses to become nuns, in which case a small portion of their estate may be assigned for their use, and the rest will be ours. The last heir of a family is by all means to be induced to enter the society. And the better to relieve his mind from all fear of his parents, he is to be taught that it is more pleasing to God that he take this step without their knowledge or consent. So betraying your parents is the last thing you do, right? Such a one, the instructions add, such a one ought to be sent to a distance to pass his novitiate. Yeah, don't do that near to home. Further, the fathers are counseled to raise large sums of money on bond. The advantage of this method is that when the bondholder comes to die, it will be easy to induce him to part with the bond in exchange for the salvation of his soul. At all events, he is more likely to make a gift of the deed than to bequeath the same amount in gold. Another advantage of borrowing in this fashion is that the pretense of poverty may still be kept up. Let the superior keep these secrets, advise with great care, and let them not be communicated but to a very few discreet persons, and that only by parts. And let them instruct others with them, when they have profitably served the society. And then let them not communicate them as rules they have received, but as the effects of their own prudence. But if they should happen to fall into the hands of strangers, who should give them in an ill sense or construction, let them be assured the society owns them not in that sense which shall be confirmed by instancing these of our order who assuredly know them not. The perfect uniformity of the methods followed by the Jesuits in all countries favored the presumption that they acted upon a prescribed rule, and the exact correspondence between their methods and the secret advices showed that this was the rule. Since the first discovery in Paderborn in 1862 AD, copies of the Secreta Moneta have been found in other libraries, as in the plundering of the Jesuit college at Prague. Numerous editions have since been published, and in so many languages that the idea of collusion is out of the question. These editions all agree, with the exception of a few unimportant variations in the reading. These private directions, says M. Lestrange, are quite contrary to the rules, constitutions, and instructions which this society professes publicly in those books it hath printed on this subject. So, this is nothing else but telling us that there is an inner teaching and an outer teaching. There is a initiated teaching and a non-initiated teaching. There's esoteric and exoteric. And that, of course, is very logical for a secret society. We should never ever forget, Bret and dear listener, that the Jesuits in the first place are a secret society. So whatever comes on out in the open of them on knowledge is in the first place not meant to be out in the open because it is a secret society. This is the same with Freemasons, which maybe is a little bit closer to you because probably everybody of you knows a Freemason. And the most master Masons even think that they are it. Yeah? They have reached the third degree and they think they are the king of the world. The moment when you go higher up in the hierarchy of the Freemasons, all the other people laugh at the quote-unquote master Mason of the third degree because he doesn't know his I don't say the word, but you know what I mean. Huh? And that is because in all these societies you have compartmentalization. You have knowledge only if you need to be in that position of that knowledge. Means if you are of no asset for the society that you are serving to know this or that, you are not told this or that. You are only taught and told what you need to know to fulfill your role. That is what a secret society is all about. That is what every open society is absolutely contrary to. There you know what you are busy with from the beginning to the end, from the bottom to the top. And that is something that you don't know in a secret society. And Jesus...
That's interesting, Jörg. You just say this. If you don't mind me making a quick comment before I forget it.
Sure, I don't.
I've been listening to a lot of these speeches that George W. Bush made recently, working on our Code Word Babylon videos. And even this most recent speech he made in 2017 while doing some kind of press conference or some kind of speaking event about current politics, he was talking about open and free societies. Think about that.
Like JFK also. We, in an open and free society, are opposed to secrets, JFK said in a secret society speech.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, that's right.
We assume to live in a free and open society.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the problem is, Bret, the deeper we look into how our society is organized, the more we understand that we are led by people who don't share their secrets, who don't share their policies with us.
Of course.
Listen, I'm just for this moment reading every Sunday evening the German translation of the book from Tapasorsi, Rulers of Evil. Mm-hmm. After I read that in 2015 or 2016 in English, I don't know. Now I'm going to read the whole complete book in German. And I'm just preparing chapter 23, which is about the dome of the great sky, and chapter 24, which is about the mark of Cain, and then chapter 25, the last chapter, which is called the two ministries. And I'm reading it all over again now in German. And I see all of a sudden even things I haven't seen at the time when I read the book first. And I understand that the subtitle of Rulers of Evil is even more important than the title itself. Now, what is the subtitle of Rulers of Evil? Useful knowledge about governments. I mean, that's what it says in German.
Sure.
News on useful knowledge on. I don't get it. No,
I don't have the book in front of me either.
I'm just pulling it out of the closet here. Useful knowledge about governing bodies. That's it.
There we go.
Useful knowledge about governing bodies, and the same translated into German. That's the subtitle of that book. And that subtitle is even more interesting or more important than Rulers of Evil, than the main title. Because you really get to know about the structure of the organization that rules above everyone. You get to know much more on the governing body of the United States of America and Rulers of Evil but also of the world governing body. And when you read the secret instructions, the Secreta Monita of the Jesuits, which we are reading right here, you get a very deep insight into the structure of the secret society that runs even the whole world. And that is so important because, you know, Bill Cooper once said, you don't have to be religious. You don't have to believe in God. You don't have to believe in what the people believe, who rule you. But if you do not understand what the people who rule you believe in, you can never follow their agenda, and you will never understand what they are doing, and you can never foresee the next step, and you will always be running in the dark like a child with closed eyes and don't know where to go and where to turn. And you turn to the right when someone speaks from the right, and you will turn to the left when someone speaks to the left, but you will be left in the dark. And therefore it is so important that you understand what, let's call it religion, are the people following that rule over you. But of course they don't make that public because they don't speak about their religion. They don't speak about their faith. They don't speak about their membership in any kind of, especially not secret societies. So that's where comes the point in where you have to study for yourself. And you can find those things out. And when all of a sudden you get to know that all the world leaders in one or other way have connections, not only connections to the Vatican, but have a religion that very closely matches, if not completely fulfills, the ordinances and rules of the Roman Catholic Church, then you do not know why they act as they act. Because as a normal person today, you don't care what the Bible says, because you don't read the Bible. No, you play on your smartphone, you use the television abundantly to watch television series and movies and all that stuff, Game of Thrones and House of Cards and all these BS, let's call it what it is, all this distraction, yeah, and doing anything but reading the Word of God. And there, in that Word of God, God tells us this, and God says also that He will put out anything in the open in its due time. Nothing will be hid that is being hidden by the people in the world. And these people have to hide something. And if you don't believe that the conspiracy is already written in the Bible, well then just let's open the Bible itself at a wonderful place, and that is in the book of Psalms. The book of Psalms is just such a wonderful book, and especially in the beginning, when we read in chapter 2 of the Psalms, why do the heathen rage and the people imagine a vain thing? The kings of the earth set themselves, and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord and against His anointed, saying, let us break their bands asunder and cast away their cords from us.
Ooh, you know,
so many people today, sorry, Brett, so many people today just make ridiculous arguments of quote unquote, you're a conspiracy theorist. They don't even understand that the word conspiracy and conspire, those words, do you know how many times you find them in the King James Version? 60 times. You find one or other, to conspire, conspired, or conspiracy, these words in the Bible. 60 times. And then I don't even count these places like I just read to you from Psalm 2, where it says, the kings of the earth set themselves and the rulers take counsel together against the Lord, which is nothing else but a conspiracy.
Right.
Yeah? So when people come to you and say, hey, you're a conspiracy theorist, I say, well, then God is a conspiracy theorist, is He? Or maybe He is the one who tells us that there actually are conspiracies, and that only when we hold the truth in our hands, which is the Word of God, we have the possibility to see through the lies and deceptions the trickster throws at us. Eh?
That's right, Jörg.
But please, Brett, you wanted to have a comment here.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I just wanted a quick throw in the mix, this wicked, evil system that we live in today. It's much more, I guess, for lack of better terms, sophisticated. One of the main issues I've tried to overcome, is this issue of poison. Being poisoned by the tap water here in America. Very big, ugly, nasty topic. I grew up in a very what would you call it, urban setting. I grew up in Minneapolis, not far at all from downtown. Very busy place. Our tap water was poisoned by all these different, specifically they add something called fluoride to the water. And if anyone's researched anything about fluoride, Jörg, I would imagine you would have a little knowledge about that too.
Yeah, because they used that, for example, in the concentration camps during the Nazi Reich in the 1930s and 1940s to dose off the people in the concentration camps to get them under control. They use fluoride in there. And they don't only use fluoride in drinking water, Brett. They use lead, they use aluminum, they use every kind of solvic agent that they can use in the water that you cannot even filter out. And it is not only the water that they poison, it is the air they poison with the chemtrails and all that stuff. But you know, when we start speaking on that, we are just speaking about the wiles of the devil, who we don't have to name by number or by every exact point, because we just hold up the Bible and we know that the devil has conspired with his fallen angels together against mankind, because the devil wants mankind to be killed. And why does the devil want mankind to be killed? Because man was made in the image of God. Man was made in the image that he wanted to overthrow. But then he was thrown out of heaven. So the image of God is of course his enemy, because he wants to exalt himself above that image. He wants to exalt himself above us. He hates us. Without hating us, the devil even doesn't have a reason to exist in the first place. As the Jesuits don't have a reason to exist without working against the Reformation, to start the counter-Reformation, and to kill and exterminate and extirpate all Protestants everywhere in the world. If they don't do that, they cease to be Jesuits. It is their very reason of existence. And that's with the devil also. And when you understand that the devil is the probably most intelligent being that you could ever imagine, and you know what he has all at his suspense to use, then you could get very, very much afraid. But when you have Jesus Christ,
yes. Yeah, the fear of the Lord.
That fear is gone. You have the fear of the Lord instead of the fear of the devil. You fear the one who can destroy body and soul in hell, and not the one who can destroy the body here on earth. Because that's just part of the game. Let him win this battle over you, but you will win the war when you are with Jesus eternally. Yeah?
Yeah, that is a very interesting point you just bring up, Jörg, and I think that this is a more advanced position that we can obtain when we've done enough studies. But when you're in a frame of mind of disbelief and of doubt and of the fear of man, then none of this makes sense. And it's really easy to go around labeling everybody what you want and not see the truth behind the Bible and the truth behind the Scripture, because it's spiritually discerned truth. It's not available to those that have lost faith or never had it to begin with. It's not even available for you. So, it's not for everyone, Jörg.
Yeah.
It should be, but it's really incredible how there are sheep and there are goats, and there is no changing that.
No. Let me read you another part from Code Word Babylon. On page 17, regarding, of course, the secret instructions of the Jesuits, we're going to read a quote from Paul von Hunsbroech, who wrote a book, 14 Years at Jesuits, Record of a Personal Experience, that was published in the beginning of the 20th century. It's a wonderful and interesting book that I still have to read, but I'm going to read this because he speaks here of Paderborn, which Albert Close just mentioned. I'm going to read to you this little paragraph. It's the second paragraph, full paragraph on page 17 in the book Code Word Babylon, volume 1. It says, "Only sound proof can turn the scale against the genuineness of the moneta. And such proofs have not been produced up to now by the Jesuits, nor has any convincing invalidation of the facts advanced on behalf of its genuineness been produced. Their genuineness rely essentially on the fact that the manuscript copies of the moneta, upon which the printed edition is based, were to be found in Jesuit colleges. The discovery of such copies in the Jesuit colleges of Prague, Paris, Roermond, which is in Holland, Munich and Paderborn, Westphalia, is beyond question. It is beyond question. They have been caught with the hand in the cookie jar, as you like to say. The copy in the Jesuit house in Paderborn was found in a cupboard in the rector's room. The manuscript copy at Munich, belonging to the contents of the library of the Jesuit College of this place, which was suppressed in 1773, was only found in 1870 in a secret recess behind the altar of the old Jesuit church of St. Michael at Munich. Therefore, what the Jesuit writes to the contrary is of no value." Unquote. Now let's continue in the book. "These private directions," says M. Lestrange, "are quite contrary to the rules, constitutions and instructions which this society professes publicly in those books it hath printed on this subject. So that without difficulty we may believe that the greatest part of their governors, if a very few be expected especially, have a double rule as well as a double habit, one of their private and particular use, and another to flaunt with before the world." Interesting quote, and this puts us up into a little footnote, number 3, that is here on the bottom of the page.
It's on the next page, actually, isn't it? On number 3?
Oh, yeah, but we're going to read this number 2 here first, because that was a little bit earlier. And then we go into number 3 also. But let's start with number 2 here. Yeah. Among the various editions of the Secreta Moneta, we mention the following: Bishop Compton's translation in London AD 1669, Sir Roger Lestrange's translation London AD 1679. It was made from a French copy printed at Cologne in 1678 AD. Another edition containing the Latin text with an English translation dedicated to Sir Robert Walpole, Premier of England, London 1723 AD. This edition says in the preface that John Schipper, bookseller at Amsterdam, bought a copy of the Secreta Moneta among other books at Antwerp and reprinted it. The Jesuits bought up the whole edition, a few copies excepted. From one of these it was afterwards reprinted. During the last century there were several English reprints. One of the copies, which Reverend Dr. Wiley used in his compend of the book, was printed at Rome in the printing press of the Propaganda and contains the Latin text page page for page with a translation in Italian. And footnote number 3 gives us the source, the Cabinet of the Jesuits Secret, opened in 1679. See in Wiley's History of Protestantism, Volume 2, page 405 through 411. And Bret and I, when we started reading Code Word Babylon, You know, Bret was so generously to send me all 3 volumes of the history of Protestantism of James Edgar Wiley a time ago, and I have all 3 copies physically here in my bookshelf. And I haven't had the time to read them yet. But when we were starting reading Cold Word Babylon, we fell upon so interesting things that we said, let's have a look at what James Edgar Wiley says about this. And then we said we should really read the history of Protestantism by James Edgar Wiley. I mean, this is probably a task that Bret and I will have for the future.
We could. Yeah, that's a really interesting proposition, Jörg.
We have so many plans for the future, Bret. But, you know, the history of Protestantism from James Edgar Wiley, that includes many, many pages on the history of the Jesuits, and that includes many, many pages that it is even published as an own book, the history of the Waldenses. Because when you buy the history of the Waldenses from James Edgar Wiley, that is just an excerpt of his work, The History of Protestantism. Did you know that?
Yeah, there's so much in that.
Just an excerpt of that, because, and that is a wonderful book of itself. You know?
Boy, can you imagine, Jörg, doing that whole 3 volumes? Wow, that would just be, I can't imagine how many videos that would take. Hours and hours and hours and hours and hours.
Can I imagine it? I don't know. But
I can't.
Would I like to do it?
Yeah.
You bet.
Yeah, God willing, we could.
Especially if it is with you, and if you have the possibility to make good photographs of the book, and then, of course, put everything that is being read in the video of this wonderful old printings, because you have an original copy.
Sure, but let's not be too hasty about it, brother, because
no,
who knows what the future's got in store. I mean, something else can pop up, too. And I think this tiny little book we're going through right now, Jörg, is of prime importance at the moment.
Yeah, we wanted to read so many things. I mean, we only came to this book. We only came to this book because we started off in The Last Exodus by James Edgar Wiley. That's something we still have to finish, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah. Very good point.
So many things to do and so little time to do it, huh?
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what's so fascinating about this book, Jörg, if I might add, is there are so many different points to go through, and all of them are quite valuable today, are they not? Absolutely,
yeah. You don't have the impression that this book was written more than 100 years ago when you hold it in your hand in 2019.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Okay. Well, let's continue in the book. I mean, we don't make much progress, but
that's all right.
I love talking about the things that we read here anyway. So we have to continue now on the top of page 64 or 76 in the PDF, which says Jesuits as Brahmins and Confuscians. So this speaks, of course, of the Jesuits in India and China. Brahmin is the priest class in India, and Confucians is from Confucius, is of course in China. Count Hunsbrook, which I just read the quote of, and I didn't know that.
Wow.
I just read on page 17 in Cold Word Babylon the quote of his book that he mentions Albert Close right here. Count Hunsbrook, a former Jesuit, in his book 14 Years a Jesuit, that I just read from, refers to a copy of these secret instructions in manuscripts, having been found in 1870 in a secret recess behind the altar in the old Jesuit church of St. Michael at Munich. That's word by word what I just read to you. I swear by God, I have not read this in advance. I didn't know that when I pulled out Cold Word Babylon here. Well, I have it right here. Now, amongst the Jesuits themselves, the secret instructions are probably only communicated to the higher orders or to those entrusted with some important mission. In the Army and Navy secret instructions, they are only issued to high officers. These abominable principles set forth in the Jesuit Bible, the Secreta Munita, led Jesuit missionaries into the most sinful compromise with heathen superstitions and philosophies in different parts of the world. In India, they swore that they were Brahmins of pure descent, sanctioned some of the most abominable habits of idolatry, and practiced some of the worst Hindu austerities to acquire fame. In China, they pretended that there was only a shade of difference between the doctrine of Christ and the teachings of Confucius. And to make proselytes, they taught, instead of pure Christianity, a corrupt system of religion and morality that was quite consistent with the indulgence of all the passions. Nay, so far did they go that finding the crucifixion was a stumbling block to the philosophic Chinese as to the Jews of old. They actually denied that Christ was ever crucified at all, and said it was a base calumny invented by the Jews to throw contempt on the gospel. They told the Red Indians that Jesus Christ was a mighty chief who had scalped more men and women and children than any warrior that had ever lived. Having no real principles, they were willing to make any compromise, no matter how foul, provided they could by it advance the interests of their order, or swell the roll of recruits to the Roman army. And how do we say that? In other words, Brother Bret, the end justifies the means.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we have a painting here. Let's first have a look at the painting.
Oh, yes.
Control-Shift-Plus, I turn around, yeah? Right. Yeah, so. Okay. Here we have the picture. This looks like, quote-unquote, proselytizing the savage, yeah? The savage people, the wild people, whether the Indians in the United States or America, or the Indians in the jungles of India, or the unknown Indian Aborigines in China, for that matter. Let's just turn the book again, and then let's see what we have to read here. The Jesuits' mission in the East Indies in 1559. When the Jesuit mission to the East Indies started out in 1559 AD, Torres, their superior, procured royal letters to the Portuguese viceroys and governors, empowering them to assist the missionaries in the conversion of the East Indies. This shortened the process wonderfully. They simply ascertained the places where the natives assembled for their own religious festivals and surrounded them with a troop of soldiers who with leveled muskets offered them the alternative of the musket ball or of baptism. In other words, how do we call that today?
Convert or die.
Exactly. Yeah. By the way, it was, if I'm not mistaken, wasn't it Linus who went into the eastern, into China and Japan, and India? I don't know anymore. No, not Linus.
Boy, I don't know.
Francis Xavier.
Oh, yes, I think that's correct, yeah. Francis Xavier.
One of the founders of the Jesuit
order. Yeah, didn't they
together.
recently make that movie with that guy, that producer, Martin Scorsese, that movie Silence?
I don't know.
You've heard of that, right?
I don't know. You showed me a few years ago, I think, the movie The Mission.
Yeah, there's that one too.
That was about the Jesuits in South America, the reduction of Paraguay,
wasn't it? Paraguay reductions. Yeah, that's a really, really good movie to just check out for the Jesuits' sake. Yeah. If you want to learn about how they did, how that kind of went down. But no, I have not checked out the new Martin Scorsese movie yet. Haven't quite gotten the guts to do it.
No, neither have I, because I don't want to waste my time. I rather do
that
studies.
too, it probably is. It's a really fancy production, of course, but it's totally, full of casuistry and sophistry, and Yeah, no thanks. You know.
And I rather do studies in studying books like these instead of watching
Yeah,
movies.
biblical book. Yeah, books that are based on the Bible, not based on Roman Catholicism.
Yeah.
Big difference.
So let's continue where we read. People had the choice between the musket ball or baptism, so convert or die. The rite followed immediately upon the acceptance of the alternative, and the next day they were taught the signs of the cross. These and similar methods were employed in various lands when the secular arm was at their disposal. It was this type of quote-unquote Christianity, read Catholicism, which the Chinese government ignored in 1913 AD when it requested Protestant Britain and North America to call on God Almighty to bless that great nation in the hour of their first birth of constitutional government. They ignored the Pope because they did not regard Romanism as Christianity in any shape or form. The Chinese judged the missionaries and their teaching by their fruits. What a testimony to our faithful Protestant missionaries. And how did the Jesuits turn that belief of the Chinese around in the last 100 years? Speaking about Jesuit tactics, testimony of University of Paris concerning the devilish practices in 1643 AD. So that is, how can I ever forget that name of that Jesuit university in Paris? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue.
Boy, I have no clue, brother.
This is incredible. I know it so well. I read so many things about it in Griesinger's book, because
sure.
But I just lost the name. Maybe the writer will tell us here. The laws of God have been so sophisticated by the unheard of subtleties that there is no longer any difference between vice and virtue. They promise impunity to the most flagrant crimes. Their doctrines are inimical to all order. And if such a pernicious theology were received, deserts and forests would be preferable to cities. And society with wild beasts who have only their natural arms would be better than society with men, who, in addition to the violence of their passions, would be instructed by this doctrine of devils to dissimulate and feign in order to destroy others with greater impunity. It is a device of the great enemy of souls, who is, as I said earlier, the devil. The Parliament of Paris in 1762 AD used language quite as strong in a memorial to the king accompanying a compilation of extracts from 147 Jesuit authors, which they presented to him. And we read, quote, that he might be acquainted with the wickedness of the doctrine constantly held by the Jesuits, from the institution of their society to the present moment, a doctrine authorizing robbery, lying, perjury, impurity, all passions and all crimes, inculcating, is that right? Inculcating?
Yeah, that's right, inculcating. Thanks.
Inculcating homicide, parricide, and regicide, overturning religion and sanctioning magic, blasphemy, irreligion, and idolatry. Unquote. The Jesuit intercept letters in the post. I can't stop thinking of that Jesuit university in Paris. I can only think of Montmartre, but that's not it, because that's a church.
Yes.
Louis le Grand is the other university. That's not. I just don't come. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. It's really. I lost it for a moment. Jesuits intercept letters in the post. One of the favorite Jesuit tricks of today is the intercepting of important letters in the post by means of their own secret agents in the postal service of various countries. The author was in Spain in May 1912, and whilst seeking for the site of the Inquisition prison, destroyed by the French in 1809, by the way, a prison where Henry Grattan Guinness stood in the ashes of the martyrs, outside Madrid, a guide who evidently was a Jesuit spy in disguise informed a Jesuit priest of the author's quest. Immediately, all the author's letters from England disappeared in the Spanish post and have never since been recovered. The manuscripts and proofs of the book the reader is now reading, when they reached the chapter and pages dealing with the secret instructions of the Jesuits, went astray in the British post for over a fortnight, September 3rd to 18th, 1915, and were only recovered by a mere chance clue. Of course, there was a plausible explanation. Rome's agents always cover their tracks very cleverly. The only letters the author has had go astray to his knowledge have been those dealing with Romanism. Protestant societies frequently have their mails tampered with. Some postal clerks in the London Post Office have openly refused to handle literature posted by the Protestant Truth Society at the office near the Society's headquarters. Here follows a list of the different countries where Jesuits have been expelled from, different countries and places and the years they were expelled therefrom. We don't need to go through that list. There are even more and bigger lists somewhere else, but you see this continuing.
Wow, talk about
page.
Taking flack, Jörg. Protestant societies frequently have had their mails tampered with. Some postal clerks in the London post offices have openly refused to handle literature posted by the Protestant Truth Society at the office near the Society's headquarters. Wow.
And
yeah, I call that suffering persecution.
This book is from the Protestant Truth Society, right?
Yeah, exactly,
it's
right.
On the back, on the bottom of the page. Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what
you have to have Roman Catholic Truth Society. Okay, now you're talking. Then you get first class.
Yeah. I don't even think that I have it under the name of Paris here. This really bothers me. That I
I looked that up here really quick, Jörg. Was it? And I'm horrible with French, so I just I can't even pronounce the name here. I'll just put it in the search here, if I can get the computer to obey what I tell it to do. Let's see. I'll put it in the conversation of our chat and Skype. And there we go. Is that one of them?
College of Clermont. No, I think it was even another one.
Okay.
I just can't. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Just a whitewash of my brain for the moment in that little point.
Maybe it's an older school that doesn't.
The school was already there before the Jesuits were there. Yeah.
Ah, okay, got it. All right.
It's one of the oldest and most renowned universities in Paris, anyway.
Gotcha.
Maybe that helps you to look it up.
Okay.
Anyway, so we got this long lists of places and meaning countries and the states, even Belgium, which is a high country of the Jesuits. They were expelled in 1826. That was just 5 years before Belgium was founded as a nation in 1831. Yeah, and of course the Jesuits had nothing to do with the rebellion that led to the founding of the state of to the Kingdom of Belgium as we know it today. Huh? Come on. Yeah. In 1818 they also have been dispelled from Belgium already before, so didn't take them long to come back, right? Anyway, you can read through this list. It's probably interesting, but they have been expelled of more than 73 countries and towns and cities throughout their history.
Oh, and you won't find the United States on there now, would you?
No, you don't find the United States of America in there. And you don't find one state within the United States in there either. So, for example, let's say they only were expelled from California or whatever. No.
Yeah, right. Good luck with that. Well, I sent you another list here, Jörg. Maybe you can quick look at that and find it in there. I'm hoping that'll help.
United States of America is their bedroom. That's where they have been founded in the New World. So,
is it in there?
But this is not Paris.
Ah,
so universities in the world. It's not in Paris.
Ah, gotcha.
Oldest, most renowned university, Paris. Well, that's what you give in, and then you come up with all these. That's strange.
No, it doesn't work. Okay, I was just trying. Anything to try and help, brother.
Yeah, okay. Oldest university in Paris.
There.
Sorbonne. That's it, the Sorbonne. This one here.
I've never even heard of it.
Oh, this is the one. I just couldn't get to the name. The Sorbonne. Yeah, normally the computer should work now and open a page that gives you information about the Sorbonne.
It just takes a while, since we're online.
Yeah. This is it.
Great.
This is Sorbonne. And that was founded already in the 13th or 14th century, if I'm not mistaken. And it was even teaching against the Jesuits in the time. Yeah. Here.
So it was Protestant.
1257. Founded 1257. So in the 13th century, as I said. Yeah. That's the one that I was talking about. Yeah. Here you see the fleur-de-lis.
Yeah, the fleur-de-lis. And look at the two crosses, huh?
Yeah.
Or two keys, however you want to look at it. Yes.
Yeah. Anyway, thanks. I really had to get that off my mind. The Sorbonne. Yeah,
no, that's good. I was trying to help out there. I just wanted to.
This is a picture.
Yeah, that is something else, isn't it?
Yeah. All these figures they have there, very biblical, right?
Well, the Jesuits, they had to, really, it's the Roman Catholic hierarchy that put the Jesuits in motion. So it's the hierarchy that had to establish in order to basically take over the world. And that's what the Jesuits have done.
Hmm. This is the exterior of the Sorbonne edifice, as you see. This is the picture we just had.
Wow. It looks very Catholic there.
Paris University, front of the Sorbonne building. Here's the entrance. And here you have the chapel of Saint Ursule, which is
it's the chapel
in the neighborhood there.
Yeah, okay.
Anyway, so we established that it was Sorbonne, the name that I was missing. I was so freaked out that I couldn't remember that name anyway. So, why were the Jesuits expelled from all these lands that we see here in this list? I mean, go up and scroll up to here and you see from 1555 on, that is only 15 years after their foundation, they have been expelled even until 1914 in many, many countries. Why were the Jesuits expelled from all these lands? Roman Catholic as well as Protestant countries, for putting into practice their secret instructions. Next time we will learn what Antichrist Pope Clement XIV said of the Jesuits. And for the one who doesn't know that in his history lesson yet, Pope Clement XIV is the Antichrist that quote-unquote officially dismissed the order of the Jesuits with a bull that is called Dominus ac Redemptor. And that was a papal bull abolishing the Jesuits for always. Well, always or eternity in that kind of regard, of course, for the Jesuits lasted 41 years, because they were re-established by Antichrist Pope Pius VII in 1814. But what Pope Clement XIV has to say on the Jesuits is something that we will learn in our next session, because this is a nice point to take a little break, and I'm really mad at myself that I couldn't come up with the name of the Sorbonne. But I think that we have had a quite interesting discussion on the subject, I hope that we made a little bit advertisement for everybody of you who listens and watches this video to go to our playlist of Covert Babylon and follow the reading that Bret and I did there in something 80 or some sessions to read the whole 525 pages of the book Covert Babylon by P.D. Stewart, The Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination, and that will give you a much deeper look than what Albert Close can just look on in his little book, because this book, the divine history, the divine program of the world's history, covers many, many more subjects than quote unquote just the Jesuits. If you want to deepen yourself into the knowledge of the Jesuit order and study a bit from that, not what they tell you, but what the people tell you who really know what they are all about, then read, among others, Code Word Babylon, or get a copy of the Secreta Monita. You can get that all over the internet. Yeah, and with that, Bret, I'm done, and I'm going to leave the closing words for you, brother. Let's close it up,
right.
And then we will probably meet next time again.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's just great. It's great to come together during the week here. I got a little window of time today that just opened up out of nowhere. And it's been a beautiful day here, and good to just, get back to the grindstone here, doing some serious studies on the portions of history that are highly neglected and ignored today. And you really don't find any of this unless you go seek it out. And that's what Jörg and I are doing. We're just going out and we're trying to find these little portions of literature that go through some of this difficult knowledge that's been more or less just shunned and ignored, and especially when you get to the aspect of studying church history, you're never, I don't think, ever going to find that in a church, although you really should. It really should be the most important topic, if you ask me today, that one could study in terms of learning what the old path to salvation was that was laid forth by our heritage in Christ. And that means the body of Christ. There is no denomination. It is the body of Christ. And in that spirit, we'll come back and meet with you soon. And we'll see you then. God bless and bye-bye.
From whence come wars and fightings among you? Come they not hence even of your lusts that war in your members? Ye lust and have not, ye kill and desire to have and cannot obtain. Ye fight and war, yet ye have not because ye ask not. Ye ask and receive not because ye ask amiss, that ye may consume it upon your lusts. Ye adulterers and adulteresses, know ye not that the friendship of the world is enmity with God? Whosoever therefore will be a friend of the world is the enemy of God. Do ye think that the Scripture saith in vain, the Spirit that dwelleth in us lusteth to envy? But he giveth more grace. Wherefore he saith, God resisteth the proud, but giveth grace unto the humble. Submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw nigh to God, and he will draw nigh to you. Cleanse your hands, ye sinners, and purify your hearts, ye double-minded. Be afflicted, and mourn, and weep. Let your laughter be turned to mourning, and your joy to heaviness. Humble yourselves in the sight of the Lord, and he shall lift you up. Speak not evil one of another, brethren. He that speaketh evil of his brother, and judgeth his brother, speaketh evil of the law, and judgeth the law. But if thou judge the law, thou art not a doer of the law, but a judge. There is one lawgiver who is able to save and to destroy. Who art thou that judgest another? Go to now, ye that say today or tomorrow, we will go into such a city, and continue there a year, and buy, and sell, and get gain. Whereas ye know not what shall be on the morrow. For what is your life? It is even a vapor, that appeareth for a little time, and then vanisheth away. For that ye ought to say, if the Lord will, we shall live and do this or that. But now ye rejoice in your boastings. All such rejoicing is evil. Therefore to him that knoweth to do good and doeth it not, to him it is sin. Go to now, ye rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you. Your riches are corrupted, and your garments are moth-eaten. Your gold and silver is cankered, and the rust of them shall be a witness against you, and shall eat your flesh as it were fire.